There's nothing quite like a cozy, warm soup to welcome your guests during the holiday season. Today, I'm sharing 3 easy and elegant soup recipes that are perfect for any festive gathering. We've got a rich and creamy chestnut soup, a sweet and savory butternut squash soup with a touch of apple, and the comforting mushroom soup. The best part, you can make them ahead of time so they're ready to go when you are. Let's get started. Our first recipe is a creamy, silky, and nutty chestnut soup. It is easy to make and brings all those classic holiday flavors to your table. This recipe serves 4 but can be doubled or tripled if you're serving a larger crowd. You can also make it a day or 2 ahead of time. As the name suggests, the star ingredient in the soup recipe is the chestnuts. When it comes to cooking them, you have a few options. You can roast them in the oven, cook them on an open fire, boil them on the stovetop, or pop them in your air fryer. If you're new to cooking chestnuts, we have detailed recipes for each method on foolproofliving.com. Not only do we cover how to prepare and cook chestnuts for each method, but we also share everything you need to know about choosing the right variety and peel them with ease. Now, there's one more option, and that is buying already roasted and peeled chestnuts from the store, which is obviously a time saver. Though when shopping for them, be sure to check the ingredient list and make sure that the only ingredients is chestnuts. To start, we'll heat a tablespoon of olive oil in a medium-sized Dutch oven over medium heat. Then we'll add 1 chopped shallot, you can use a small onion as well, 1/3 of a cup of chopped carrot, and 1/3 of a cup of chopped celery. We'll cook it, stirring occasionally until vegetables are softened for about 5 to 7 minutes. We'll add in the garlic and cook for about 30 seconds. Next, we'll stir in 2½ cups of chestnuts, 1 teaspoon chopped fresh thyme, 1 bay leaf, 5 cups of vegetable stock, ½ teaspoon of kosher salt, and 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. We'll bring that to a boil and let it simmer for 15 to 20 minutes or until all the vegetables are fork tender. When done, we'll remove the bay leaf, turn the heat off, and carefully puree the soup using an immersion blender. If you do not have an immersion blender, you can use a regular blender as well, but be very careful as it is super hot. As you puree the soup, you may end up with some foam on top. This is normal. Just remove it with a spoon and bring the soup to one last boil while stirring constantly. It should disappear as you stir it. We'll finish it off with a 1/4 cup of heavy cream and 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg. At this point, it is always a good idea to give it a taste and add more seasoning if necessary. When it is time to serve, we'll ladle it into bowls, garnish with a couple of broken chestnuts and a teaspoon of chopped chives or parsley. It's optional, but I usually serve it with a dollop of creme fraiche. Now, I don't usually keep creme fraiche in my fridge, but during the holidays, I like to splurge a little. If you don't have it on hand, no worries, you can drizzle a tablespoon of heavy cream instead. Like I said, it's optional, but it adds a welcome tangy touch that brings all the flavors together. If you're making this a day or 2 ahead, you can cook the vegetables, puree the soup, and store it in an airtight container. On the day you're serving it, simply reheat the soup and stir in the cream and nutmeg right before serving. Our second recipe is butternut squash soup. It is a fall classic, but with a twist. We're adding an apple to the mix, which helps balance the earthy flavors of the squash with a touch of sweetness. This recipe serves for 6 people as a starter and can be made a day or 2 ahead. We'll start by heating a tablespoon of olive oil in a large Dutch oven over medium-high heat. We'll add in 1 chopped onion, ½ cup of chopped celery, ½ cup of chopped carrots, and cook for 5 to 7 minutes or until the vegetables are softened. We'll then add in 2 cloves of minced garlic and cook for 30 seconds. Now let's talk about the next set of ingredients. As the name suggests, we're using butternut squash here, but you can easily substitute other types of squash using the same formula. Kabocha squash, pumpkin, acorn squash would all work. And if you're new to cutting butternut squash, we have a detailed post on our blog that shows you how to cut it into cubes with ease. I'll include the link below, so feel free to check it out if you need a refresher. I recommend peeling and cutting it into small cubes before adding into the soup. Okay, let's get back to cooking. Into the pot with the vegetables, we'll add 3 pounds of butternut squash, 1 cubed Granny Smith apple, 4 cups of vegetable stock, ½ teaspoon of kosher salt, and 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. We'll put the lid on, bring it to a boil, then turn down the heat to medium and cook until the squash is fully cooked, about 20 to 25 minutes. You can check on this by inserting a knife into one of the cubes. If it comes in and out easily, it should be ready to go. We'll turn the heat off and puree the soup. Normally, I would use an immersion blender, but I'm using my upright blender just to demonstrate. I think the most important thing here is to work in small batches, blend it in slow speed, and be very careful as we're working with very hot liquid. If you're using a blender, it is also a good idea to put the blended portion into a bowl. When you're ready done pureeing the whole soup, you can pour that back into the pot. We'll bring it to one last boil. This is also a good time to give it a taste and add more if necessary. When ready, we'll ladle it into bowls. You can serve it as it is or garnish it with a dollop of creme fraiche or a drizzle of half and half, and a sprinkle of fresh parsley for a pop of color. You can make the whole recipe a day or two ahead, bring it to room temperature, and store it in an airtight container and keep it in the fridge. Just warm it up before serving, and if it's too thick, you can add in a bit of water or vegetable stock to thin it out. Our final recipe is a shiitake mushroom soup. I know most people think of shiitake mushrooms as more of an Asian ingredient, but I love using them because they have a richer, more intense flavor compared to your regular button mushrooms. Their deep, earthy, and meaty texture really elevates the soup, and because they're so rich in flavor, this recipe doesn't need as much cream as most mushroom soups. We're only using half a cup of half and half, but honestly, even if you skip it, you'll still end up with a deliciously creamy soup. We'll start by preparing the shiitakes. Using a damp paper towel, we will wipe the caps to remove any visible dirt or debris hiding under or around the gills. Next, we'll place them into a colander and give them a quick rinse. Now, like most people, I've always thought that washing shiitake mushrooms, or any kind of mushroom for that matter, isn't a good idea. In the past, I've heard many say that when washed, mushrooms absorb additional moisture that leads to loss of flavor and longer cooking time. However, I recently found out from this article on Cooks Illustrated magazine that rinsing mushrooms is actually okay. These pro chefs tested the myth by rinsing a batch of mushrooms and weighing them before and after. In the end, the weight difference was so minuscule that the chefs concluded that it's okay to give mushrooms a quick rinse before use. I used a colander to rinse them, but a salad spinner is also a good option. Next, we'll remove the stems. While the stems of shiitake mushrooms are edible, they have an unpleasant woodsy flavor and are too fibrous and chewy to eat. To trim the stems, turn the shiitake mushroom over, exposing both the gills and the stem. Then gently pull the stem right where it meets the cap. It should snip right off. Finally, we'll slice them thinly and set them aside. Now, with the mushrooms ready, let's get cooking. We'll grab a large Dutch oven and heat 3 tablespoons of butter or olive oil over medium-high heat until melted. We'll add a small chopped onion and a teaspoon of chopped fresh thyme. We'll cook that for about 6 to 7 minutes or until the onion is translucent. We'll then add in the clean shiitake mushrooms, 2 cloves of minced garlic, 2 cups of vegetable stock, 1.5 cups of water, a pinch of nutmeg, half a teaspoon of salt, and a 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. We'll put the lid on, bring it to a boil, turn the heat to medium-low, and let it simmer for 15 minutes, keeping a close eye and stirring a few times during the process. We'll turn the heat off and carefully puree the soup using an immersion blender. Then we'll turn the heat back on, add a half a cup of half and half, and bring it to one last boil. We'll finish it off with a squeeze of fresh lemon juice. This is also a good time to give it a taste and add more seasoning if necessary. Now, I don't know about you, but I love serving mushroom soup with croutons on top, especially during the holiday season, and making it is so easy. If you agree, we'll start by heating a couple of tablespoons of olive oil or butter in a large skillet over medium heat. We'll then cut up a couple of slices of bread into small 1-inch cubes and add that into the skillet. We'll cook, tossing often for 10 to 12 minutes, keeping a close eye on them and turning the cube bread frequently to make sure that they are evenly toasted. When you're ready to serve, just ladle the soup into bowls and garnish it with croutons and some fresh chopped thyme. If you're making the soup a day ahead, follow the recipe until the last step. Puree the soup and store it in an airtight container. When you're ready to serve, simply reheat it and then add the half and half and lemon juice right before serving. There you have it, friends. I hope this video inspired you with your holiday menu prep. You can find all the links to each of these recipes in the description below. In the blog post, we covered more information like ingredient substitutions, storage tips, and pairing suggestions. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. 2 cups of vegetable stock. There's air bubbles coming out of the bread. Oh. Thank you so much for There you go. Don't. There's another one popped up. Come on, air bubbles, go away.